Finally, we're going to take a trip. We're going to go up the Missouri River to the top of a bluff and then back a few hundred years. This isn't just a story, though, about a place. It's a story about a person. Caravaninger went there to find out what he did and why he did it.
Have you ever been to a place where you can feel its story without having heard it yet? Fort Charrette is one of these places. Perched high on a bluff overlooking the Missouri River, the site isn't simply a collection of historical buildings and artifacts, but it's also a time capsule of what life was like in the late 1700s and early 1800s for the tenacious few that lived on the very edges of the North American wilderness. For many Americans, the 200 years that passed between Jamestown and the Lewis and Clark expedition are pretty hazy. A vague couple of centuries punctuated by Spanish explorers, French trappers, and the Revolutionary War. And the rich, millennia-long history of the Native American tribes that preceded this is even murkier in our minds. Wheelock Crosby Brown, proprietor of Fort Charrette, has been working for decades to change all of that.
Okay, come on in. 30 years. 30 years to pull it together.
Historian, preservationist, and adventurer, Brown's love for history and the wilderness that remains began with his parents, who would take the family on long camping and sightseeing trips throughout North America. After military service and studying engineering, architecture, art, and world history, Brown explored Europe, where he began to realize the value of historic preservation. On what was supposed to be a visit home to Missouri, Brown took the scenic route and decided to look for the then undiscovered remains of Fort Carondelet, a Choctaw family fur trading post from 1794 to 1800. Within days, Brown had located the site, and the discovery would change the course of his life, sparking a devotion for historic preservation and education.
This is an original 1700s Missouri French voyageur dugout log canoe. The French learned to make these from the natives. And I've had this in the Missouri River 3 times, and it runs very well.
As former chief of Missouri State Historic and Archaeological Sites, Crosby Brown used his experienced eye and passion for history to start his own historic architectural firm in 1972 and begin the project that is now Fort Charrette. Brown had been searching for a house where his parents could enjoy their retirement when he found an almost totally original log home built in 1797. The trouble was, the current owners were selling the house, but not the land. After fastidious photography and copious note-taking, Brown, with the help from his parents and cousin, carefully transported the home to where it now stands, and meticulous reconstruction began. But the location wasn't just chosen for its fantastic view of the Missouri River. Brown had also discovered the ruins of another French trading fort nearby.
So myself and 3 other guys did 2 months of archaeological dig of the entire perimeter of the building and the entire interior. And the archaeology was fabulous because I found the foundations and footings of the chimney and the hearth, which gave me the exact dimensions of it, plus enough original bricks that I was able to face the front of the fireplace with original brick.
As excavation continued, it began to reveal what daily life was like for the family who had lived and worked at the fort, as well as reflect the larger experience in the wilds of early North America. Many of the French who came to trap fur developed a deep respect and affection for the native people they met. Seeking to coexist instead of conquer, they traded fairly.
Their human relations with the natives was, by and large, excellent. They weren't looking for gold. They weren't looking for the fountain of youth. These were mostly individual guys who loved the wilderness, who loved the lifestyle.
The fur trade proved beneficial to both the French and the native tribes, who shared their ancient survival skills and knowledge with these Europeans.
They learned the poisonous snakes, they learned the mushrooms that are good to eat, they learned everything. So they became wilderness experts very early.
Eventually, it became common for French and Native Americans to learn each other's language, live together, hunt together, and intermarry. Brown's reconstruction of the fort and his vast collection of period artifacts gives visitors a glimpse into this lesser-known chapter of American history through the lives of a French trader, his Osage wife, and their 2 sons.
And by doing archaeology here, I was able to furnish this exactly the way it was, as far as what was going on. This is where they lived. This is her
A door
fireplace.
was all that separated the family from their business. Perched on the edge of the wilderness, the fort offered a variety of services, in addition to the skinning, weighing, curing, and trading of furs for other goods.
Carpentry, woodworking, the blacksmithing was all over here. Why was he smithing? Well, the nearest village was St. Louis, and the only road was a mud rut hole, what we now call Manchester Road. And so he had to be able to do all of these crafts, okay, right here.
Of course, the hub of the fort was the trading counter, where necessities and luxury sat side by side.
Everything behind the counter is period, no reproductions.
Faced with a long winter and freezing temperatures, bearskin gloves and capes were perhaps the more practical option for many trappers. But a plug of tobacco or a block of tea all the way from China also provided comfort through long, lonely nights.
And if you can imagine the variety of folks who walk through this door on a daily basis, year-round, you've got some idea of how fascinating this life must have been to them.
Brown offers school and private tours of the fort and grounds by appointment, and hopes his living history site allows young people to engage with the past and consider the hard work, courage, and cooperation of those who stood in the same place over 200 years ago.